The money.
Objection, Your Honor. Move to strike.
I will have order in the court. Order, or I will clear the court. I'll have it quiet in here. Quiet. I have warned this assembly.
I warned you, Dorian. No
enough.
tricks, no games.
Mrs. Lord, you will only answer questions put to you by the attorney.
Yes, Your Honor.
Proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mrs. Lord, how long were you and Victor Lord married?
7 months, 4 days. We both knew that we didn't have very long, but he was very brave.
During this 7-month marriage, did you spend a lot of time together?
We were virtually inseparable.
Oh, yeah.
That was the only way that Victor would have it.
She bullied my father into isolation. She wouldn't let Tony see him, and then she wouldn't let me see him.
And after his heart attack, he had to cut back on his time spent on business at the Banner, yes?
Oh, yes, he tired very easily. I tried to encourage him to keep his attention up at the Banner, but he said that it didn't matter to him anymore and that he wanted to spend more time with me.
And aside from you, whom else did he spend his time with?
In all honesty, virtually no one. And that was his choice.
Liar. What about his children?
Victor was in a very fragile state, and being with people who disturbed him was really out of the question.
Objection, Your Honor. Mrs. Lord's commentary on Mr. Lord's state of mind is supposition.
No, excuse me. I'm sorry, that's not true. Your Honor, Victor told me himself that he did not wish to see Viki or Tony, but most especially Viki.
Yes, all right, I'll allow this.
Mrs. Lord, did Victor Lord ever indicate to you that he did not want to see his daughter Victoria at all?
Yes.
Why was that?
Because Victor was very deeply disturbed by Vicky's marriage to Joe Riley. They argued about it. Oh, time and time again. Finally, Victor, he said he did not want to see Vicky anymore. It was just too painful.
Oh, painful how?
It's what caused his first stroke.
Mrs. Lord, are you saying that the stroke that ultimately ended Victor Lord's life was caused by his agitation over his daughter's marriage?
I hate to say something like this right here out in the open, but since Vicky is the one who forced this trial, my answer is yes. That is exactly what happened.
Objection, Your Honor.
Oh, no, Your Honor, I'm sorry. This witness is a doctor, and she was intimately acquainted with the medical and psychological condition of the deceased. Therefore, I say that this line of questioning is entirely relevant to this case.
Continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mrs. Lord, when you say that his daughter and her husband upset Victor Lord, what exactly do you mean?
I mean that when he saw Victoria, his daughter, he had a negative physical reaction. His heart would start to beat faster, his breathing would become erratic. It was really quite dramatic.
Thank you.
As in the case of that first stroke, Vicky and Joe had just left after visiting, and Victor was railing and railing about how much he disliked Joe and how he was sure that Joe was going to hurt Vicky someday, and how frustrated he was that Vicky wouldn't or couldn't listen to him, and how deeply, deeply disappointed he was in his daughter. He became very agitated, very upset. He worked himself up into such a state of anxiety that right before my very eyes, he suffered a massive stroke.
You miserable liar! You're a lying, murdering liar!
Mrs. Buchanan, I will have you escorted out of this courtroom and banned from these proceedings if there is another outburst. Is that understood? Now, Miss Gannon, is there any possibility that we could end these proceedings before midnight?
Oh, yes, Your Honor. I'm just going to roll this right along. Mrs. Lord, I have to ask you some questions about the period following Victor Lord's first stroke. I would like some short and specific answers. Understood?
Of course.
Thank you. As Victor Lord's primary caregiver, did you make arrangements for care upon his release from the hospital?
Yes, I hired Victor a private duty nurse.
Was that Ethel Crawford?
Yes.
And how long did Ethel Crawford care for Victor Lord?
At home?
Yes.
A month. Because during that time, he suffered a second, much more severe stroke and had to be readmitted into the hospital.
Ethel Crawford testified in this court that Victor Lord had that second stroke because you withheld medication from him. Do you disagree with that assertion?
I most certainly do. It's completely untrue. On the day that Victor had his second stroke, I did everything in my power to save his life, as I did on the day he had his first stroke, as I did on the day that he had his heart attack earlier that year.
All right. So Victor Lord was admitted into Landview Hospital and he was stabilized. How much time did you spend with him at the hospital?
I kept a vigil at his bedside.
I see. And did Victor Lord insist on seeing only you as he had when he was recuperating at home?
He was unconscious from the time of that second stroke.
I see. So, in fact, the visitors who had so upset him when he was at home, his daughter and his son, and Viki and Tony, and Viki's husband, Joe, could now visit him at the hospital without upsetting him in the manner you just described, because the man was comatose.
That's right.
And yet other visitors were in the room often, were they not, without anyone raising a question.
That's true.
All right, why don't we move on? Let's move on to the night that Victor Lord died. Were you in the hospital with him?
As always.
Did you leave his room from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m.?
Yes.
Where did you go?
I had been sitting by his bed for hours, and I had become despondent. As a physician, I knew that each day that he spent in a coma, his chances of recovery became more remote. I was filled with such sadness that I thought some fresh air would do me good.
So you left the room?
Yes.
What time was this?
9:45 p.m.
Are you certain about the time?
Yes, I am. I'm certain about everything that happened from then on because it turned out to be the last hour of my dear husband's life.
Where did you go when you left the room?
I went into the corridor and down the stairs. I sat on a bench outside the hospital doors. I was just trying to collect my thoughts.
Did anyone see you there?
Oh, Miss Gannon, please, this all happened 18 years ago. Little did I think then that I would be sitting here now, defending myself against these unjust, cruel charges.
So no one saw you?
I'm sure that many people saw me, but I would be hard-pressed to produce witnesses now.